this. Part one, true, false, or uncertain. The point here is less about true, false, or uncertain, but rather the statement. I want you to, I'm just going to, there's a statement that's made, and I would like you to think about it and address it. So the statement here is that the Marshall Lerner condition guarantees that consumption goes up for both lenders and borrowers. Oh, wait a second. Marshall Lerner, that was, we have that in our Mundell-Fleming model. This is something about how changes in the real exchange rate change net exports because of this sort of price and quantity effect. Consumption going up for both lenders and borrowers, this is a consumption savings model. So, okay, so we know this is wrong, it's mixing up two things. So what can we say? So I would say, well, okay, so what does the Marshall Lerner condition? The Marshall Lerner condition states that a fall in exports and quantity affect rise in imports outweigh the value effect decrease in the cost of imports, so that in a real appreciation leads to a decrease in net exports. Right, so said the Marshall Lerner condition guarantees something. They gave the wrong thing, so they gave the right thing. You could also do it the other way around. So maybe what would guarantee the consumption goes up for both lenders and borrowers? So think of a change maybe in the consumption savings model, right? An increase in discounted lifetime income and present value of lifetime income, an increase in the present value of lifetime income would guarantee the consumption goes up for both lenders and borrowers. That would be an alternative. Right? Or you could say, right, or we're mixing up two different models here. So there are a number of different ways that you could answer this. All right, the second one, the Taylor principle posits that the nominal interest rate must move more than 1-for-1 in response to inflation. Right? So this is true. So the Taylor principle does posit that the nominal rate moves more than 1-for-1 with inflation. Now, okay, we can say something about this. Why? What is the point? What is the meaning of the Taylor principle? So this ensures that the non-equilibrium, a sunspot, equilibrium increase in inflation would lead the real interest rate to increase, lowering demand and contradicting or stabilizing this increase. So this turns, it overrides or makes a sunspot or bubble increase in inflation non-self-fulfilling. Okay. You could also maybe explain this so if the Taylor principle doesn't hold, then a sunspot increase in inflation will be self-fulfilling because the increase in inflation will lead the real rate to fall because the nominal interest rate doesn't rise more than 1-for-1, which increases our demand and confirms this bubble or sunspot increase in inflation. Well, you can do like that too. Okay. Yeah.
For the question 2, can we insert the Taylor equation?
Sure, right? So you
Yeah, and the condition is the phi pi.
Greater than 1.
Yeah. So we can agree that it is true because 1 unit increase in inflation can more than 1 unit increase in the interest rate.
That sounds like a good answer too. So her idea is, well, how about I just, I could also write this with an equation. Right, so the Taylor equation.
Yeah.
Taylor principle means
greater than 1, yeah.
And so it's true that di is greater than d pi as DI equals pi for DI if. Okay, with math, sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, and this way, so you didn't have to say anything about what the effect of the intuition is. No? Right? There's many different ways to answer this question. Did I ask you? There wasn't anything here that would make you believe you have to give an explanation or say something about this sunspot increase. You know? The whole point. So there's different ways, right? So perfect. Thanks for the example. 5 points. So 5 minutes. So I want you to read the question. Think about it for a minute or two. So it's like 1 point for reading, 2 points, right? You think about an answer, and then address this statement. Right? Say something about it. There's not only going to be one exact correct answer in many cases. It's just your opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned. So also giving you the choice here. You only have to address 6 of the following 8. Allows you to make choices to best demonstrate what you learned. This open answer is also another way to let you demonstrate what you learned. And this originally, so there's a great story behind this. A former boss of mine when I was a postdoc in Berlin did this on exams because it was declared illegal in Berlin to ask students true, false, or multiple choice questions, because the courts determined that inhibited the full unfolding of the free expression of students. Right? So there's actually a legal basis in Germany of protecting people's the development in full display of your wonderful thoughts. But I think it's a good point though. It's better to do this than true false anymore. So only a portion of firms can optimally adjust their prices. Those that do make up for past pricing mistakes and thus behave in a backward-looking manner. Oh, well, this is wrong. It's the exact opposite logic of what we had in our Keynesian model, right? So we're supposed to intuitively, essentially, give one way is you could explain intuitively the mechanism behind the new Keynesian model. So only a portion of firms can adjust their prices. They will take this into account when setting the prices, hence incorporating expected future desire price movements into the price today. So therefore, firms behave in a forward.
Expectation.
In contrast to interest rate rules, money supply and fixed exchange rate rules automatically provide output support similar to a policy mix in response to technology shocks. This was exactly wrong. That was the whole advantage when we looked at the new Keynesian model in response to technology shock under the interest rate rule. Because we didn't have full adjustment of prices, output went up, but not by as much as it otherwise would have. So we had a negative output gap. Right? Negative output gap leads to inflation going down. We'd expect inflation prices to go down in any case with an increase in productivity. Both these two together with our Taylor rule, right, told us that the nominal interest rate will go down, adding in sort of an endogenous expansionary monetary policy response to the technology shock. So it's under interest rate rules that monetary policy automatically provides an output support, similar to policy mix in response to technology shocks. If money supply or fixed exchange rates, or exchange rates are held fixed, there's a quantity rule, then monetary policy does not respond endogenously.
second case, that when we split into two cases of flexible and fixed exchange rate, and we realize that in fixed exchange rate scenario, we cannot have an effective monetary policy.
Yes, we cannot have an independent monetary policy. So that's the whole idea there is, well, under a fixed exchange rate, monetary policy is only going to respond to an exchange rate movement. There can't be an additional endogenous policy mix-like response. So you could argue, you could make that, but then would be the question, so, right, so there you can yeah. There you can say that it could be nice then to we have interest rate rule and money supply are also mentioned in the statement here, so it'd be nice if you said something about them as well, right? But that's also a very good argument. Okay, price dispersion is irrelevant for first order dynamics, but reflects incomplete adjustment of prices over time. Right, so the amount to which prices are dispersed from is we have some firms that have old prices, some firms have new prices, we're going to have a whole distribution of prices. Right? It didn't show up in our first order conditions and our the first order dynamics, so what does matter? For the first order dynamics, it's only the first moment, it's not the variance, so it's the average price level that matters. Right? Whether all the prices are close to this average or far away doesn't matter at the first order, it's only the average, but indeed how far apart these prices are is going to be a reflection of this incomplete adjustment. It's also so, look at this before. This is kind of a nice. If you look at so different values of theta, the higher is theta, the higher is the probability that we won't be able to adjust. Right? This is the measure of price rigidity. And if you just look at the fraction of firms who price over these K periods, remember every firm that's allowed to change its price for one period will choose the same price. So this is going to tell us sort of, we have X% of firms with this period's price, X% firms with last period's price, the period before that, and so on. So if we have this theta equal to 0.5, this means half of our firms have this period's price, and the other half have a price that's at least 1 period old. In fact, then we have half of that half have at least a price that's 2 periods old. And 3 periods old. Right, and so you can see this, the one criticism that some people have of the Calvin model is that there's a non-zero probability that there's a firm with a 3-year-old price, with a 5-year-old price, with a 20-year-old price, with a 1,000-year-old price. It's a non-zero probability. Is it really there? And so here, let's go back 250 years. Right? Only with a really, really high rigidity does this even show up, but even then, what percentage of firms at 0.00000, mathematically it's true, but effectively it's not. But what you can see here, right, we have the higher is this theta, right, the more firms we're going to have further with older prices, it's going to give us more of a dispersion of prices away from this average in a period. So now let's go to the first sort of open problem. So let's interpret the New Keynesian Phillips curve. All right. Right, there's a couple different ways here from the slides you can do that, so just, here I gave one. So, inflation is a result of current and future output gaps. Like the output gap to marginal cost, so that's easier for interpretation. Right? Output gap represents output deviation from natural output, so if it's positive, we have excess demand, right? Which gives us a pressure on prices. From the firm's perspective, this increase in demand is meeting this with higher costs. Right? Firms are going to set their prices as a markup, or try to set their prices as a markup or marginal cost, passing off these costs to consumers. Right? So, but in the face of nominal liquidity, firms are not always able to adjust their price. So when choosing a price today, they're going to take into account future expected optimal price increases or markups over marginal costs in the future. Then a firm would raise its price today, even if current marginal costs don't warrant this, as long as it believes that future marginal costs will increase. So firms behave in a forward-looking manner and front-load this optimal price adjustment. Okay, so now we're given the optimization problem for firms. We're supposed to interpret the parameter theta verbally. Okay, this is the portion of firms randomly selected to not change their prices. So, due to random selection, it's also the probability for a firm being able to change its price level. Right? So, the probability that a firm changing its price level today, hence the probability for a firm changing its price today. So it's a firm that has this problem, that it won't be able to change its price again next period, is theta. And the probability that it won't be able to change its price the period after that is theta squared, and so on. So in choosing its optimal price today, it in the face of potentially not being able to change it a number of periods in the future, the firm will consider future profits in its decision today, weighted by the probability that it won't be able to adjust. All right, and now we're supposed to set theta equal to 0 and solve for the optimal price in this case. So when theta equals to 0, then only the k equals 0 part remains. So we can write this out like this. Take our derivatives and solve, and we get this markup over marginal cost. All right, now derive equilibrium process of inflation, output gap, and real interest rate in terms of monetary policy shock. Okay, set the other shock to 0 and use a method of undetermined coefficients. So method of undetermined coefficients in our New Keynesian-Phillips curve, in our IS equation, we combine them, and we get the responses for inflation and the output gap to monetary policy shock. We can calculate the response for the real interest rate. Natural rate doesn't change. We can substitute in here the interest rate rule, and then use our method of undetermined coefficients to then determine this response. And this denominator, as long as this denominator is positive, we're going to have the inflation. Oh, now we're supposed to interpret. So interpretation comes next. So this is just doing the math. And now a contraction in monetary policy shock, so an increase in this mu. output gap, inflation go down, real interest rate goes up. Right, so the nominal interest rate goes up. Ceteris paribus, we have incomplete adjustment of prices, so the nominal interest rate is going to go up as well. Nominal rate has gone up. Households, good time to save. They're going to shift towards saving, reducing consumption, reducing demand today. So this reduces output. The natural rate hasn't changed, so the lowers the output gap. With surplus supply, excess supply, we're going to lower our costs, lower production. Now, while these lower prices would tend to stimulate demand, this price adjustment is incomplete. So, incomplete. So this is why output still goes down. But you can think in a model where we have fully flexible prices, then the price would go down by exactly that amount so that output doesn't change at all. This is what we looked at the ISLM equation. In the goods market, we looked at off-equilibrium behavior. What happens if we have excess demand or excess supply? And we always argued we went right back to this equilibrium key. We have the ability to deviate from that equilibrium because our prices can't quote fully adjust, which is how we get these real effects. Now these effects are partially attenuated by the endogenous responsive monetary policy and the interest rate rule. Output gap inflation both go down, right, which is going to lead the nominal interest rate to go down relative to what it would do ceteris paribus in response to the shock mu. Right, so the impact on the output gap inflation is not as large as it otherwise would be. And then the dynamics follow. Whatever the dynamics of mu are, we can see this on here. Whatever autocorrelation we have with mu is going to be the autocorrelation of R, pi, and Y tilde. Okay. Alright, so that's, examples. So what you see is interpretation, intuition, understanding what these different parts are. There's some calculations we have, solving the model in here. We have first order. I did a question a couple of days ago. Oh my goodness, are we going to do all this in the exam? Well, kind of, yeah, it's all there, but if you notice, I've chosen things explicitly to be doable in an exam, right? This isn't because it doesn't make sense, to ask you to do a derivation that takes 2 hours, and either you get it right or not. Okay.
Yeah, at first I tried to take the derivative of the equation 7 and I stopped.
It's harder to take the derivative and then set theta equals to 0. It's easier to set theta to 0, and then that's exactly why I try to be nice here and said rewrite the problem rewrite the problem, and then solve for the optimal price. Yeah? It's a much more difficult, to first solve for the optimal price, but then say that theta equals to 0. If you want some good practice, you have here you have the lecture slides. Take that derivative, and then set theta equal to 0, and see if you get them. You should get the same answer, which is just a good exercise. Yeah? Okay. The liquidity effect. So briefly describe the liquidity effect and how it relates to movements in the money supply, interest rate, and output. The liquidity effect is really just our intuitive understanding of what the definition of contractionary or expansionary monetary policy should do. Monetary policy is called contractionary if it, from a real economy perspective, contracts output, reduces output from control of the amount of money it should contract, reduce the money supply. So we should have money supply going down, output going down, or contractionary monetary policy. And how is this implemented? This money supply reduction? Well, by increasing the nominal interest rate. So increasing the opportunity cost of holding money. So we should see money supply and output being positively correlated, and the two of them being negatively correlated with the interest rate. Negative relation. Interest rate, expansion stimulates the economy. This is output. Okay. Using ISLM, demonstrate the effect of this. Okay. So ISLM, start off in the blue. Let's have an expansionary monetary policy shock. Right, so money supply is increased. And now I know with this money supply increasing, this is going to shift then the LM curve downward. This leads to this decrease in I and the decrease in Y. And then remember to make it fully internally consistent. Then I come back here and say, well, if MS is increased, I know that the output has increased, the money demand will also shift up. And then I can pick off by how much by drawing money demand so that it intersects at the same point here. So I first shift the money supply, realize that's going to lead to a decrease in the nominal interest rate, which means I can then work out how the LM curve must have shifted to the right, downward to the right. In equilibrium, we now have this new output level, this new interest rate. This new output level is an increase in output, so I know that money demand also has to increase. And it increases by exactly that amount so that we are in this new equilibrium. So this order is what I did then. MS goes to MS prime. So this is an increase in money supply. This shifts the LM curve down to the right. Interest rate goes down, output goes down, or output goes up. Sorry, interest rate goes down, output goes up. It's the liquidity effect, which is what shifts then our money demand. All right, examine now the following impulse responses in a closed economy New Keynesian model to a contractionary monetary policy shock. Interpret then what is the difference in response to inflation to the ISLM model. So I put a lot of this D. In both cases here, we're going to talk about the effect of a contractionary monetary policy shock. Alright, so you can interpret the positive monetary policy shock, so I have the same interpretation here. That's what we just went through with the other problem. Alright, so you can, there's an option here, but there's no way to escape having to explain the effects of monetary policy shock. I think that's fair. That you should do. So then what's the difference? So now we can contrast this with the ISLM model. So in contrast to the ISLM model, we also have a movement in prices. ISLM assumes that prices are constant. So inflation, inflation has gone down, and so we have a decrease in prices. So the contractionary shock reduces inflation here. This would stimulate demand. Right, prices gone up. So the output effect, right, would likely be reduces inflation. So the output effect. Slow down. Here was an expansionary monetary policy shock. And now contractionary monetary policy shock. I'm going to slow myself down. So now I have to think about this IS11, but it's now in the other direction. Right? So if we were to raise or decrease the money supply to contractionary monetary policy, we go from red to blue. And this would drop then output from Y1 to Y0. Right? And we see output here falls also. Output falls, and interest rate goes up, and money supply goes down. So money supply goes down, output goes down, interest rate goes up. I'm sorry, interest rate goes up. So this is the from red to blue, the contractionary. But in contrast, we now also have a decrease in inflation. So this would stimulate demand. So the drop from Y1 to Y0 probably not as large. We'd have perhaps from Y to blue, but then also an increase in perhaps the IS equation, increase in demand. So the output effect would likely be smaller than the ISLF model. For example. So difference in response to inflation, the ISLM model. The ISLM model assumes that inflation prices and hence inflation is constant, price inflation is 0. And this is going to give us a feedback effect in the output magnitude. I'm now using a money demand function, argue why the liquidity effect can be overturned in the New Keynesian model. So let's take this money demand function and calculate the total differential. So we're going to let everything change, and then think about how we might be able to overturn a positive correlation between M and Y, and a negative correlation of the two with DI. So if we solve for the change in the interest rate, ran out of space on the page here. But so you can kind of see this here. So if M goes up and everything else stays constant, then Y would go down. Right? This would be this negative correlation. I'm sorry. If Y goes up, everything else is constant, then the I would go. Sorry. One more time. M goes up, we hold P and Y constant, and the right hand side of the equation needs to go up, which means this whole term here needs to, I'm confusing myself. If I goes up, this is positive, minus sign, so this means the right hand equation goes down, so we need a left hand equation going down as well. So increase in I would have to go together with decrease in M. There we go. That's why there's a minus out front here. They're negatively correlated. But if you look at this, we also have dy on the same side of the equation here. So we can have, if we hold M and P constant, an increase in Y would go together with an increase in I. Alright, so if we solve for the total response of di, of interest rates, let's solve for di, we get then, holding P and Y constant, we then certainly get this liquidity effect. Yeah? But prices and output do respond. Output increases, and prices increase as well, both of which are going to decrease this response in IT. Right? So if prices increase sufficiently, right? Why? Maybe from a front loading of future expected effects, right? If we think there's going to be really, really big effects, maybe monetary policy, this monetary policy shock, this dy brings about a dy or di the next period after that are sufficiently large, then this front loading from the price setting could cause this to outweigh the otherwise direct effect in M. Right? Or you could also argue want, if the output effect is sufficiently large. Now you can say, well, maybe we have an accelerator going on a model. Can we give an accelerator explanation? Right, so the direct effect will lead to a decrease in interest rates, stimulate investment. Right, the stimulation in investment increases the net worth of firms and entrepreneurs with their increase in their net worth. We're able to borrow more because the finance premium goes down, which is going to increase the output effect. Right? So if we have a sufficiently large accelerator, this might give us a movement in output that is large enough to outweigh this effect. Oh, that's a good answer too. Now we've jumped across to another model. I'm very impressed. Right? So there's different ways in these open questions that you can answer. Right? I use the total differential. It doesn't. It says use the money demand function. You can probably do this verbally. You could also think about right, you can use. Don't have the. Yeah. I was going to say you could solve for the responses, but that's from problem 1. So if you did problem 1 and problem 2, but you shouldn't do that because you're only supposed to answer one of the following 2. No? It's also here really important, especially important in mine, but it's always important in every exam, read the directions. No? Here, you know why? Because you're going to waste time if you answer both questions. And you would be surprised, you would be horrified if I told you I do this setup on all my exams trying to help students, and I talk to students like this, explicitly mentioning this in every single class where I do that, and without fail, there's always at least one person that maybe they forgot they weren't listening, or, fair enough, they're stressed out in the exam and they weren't thinking and they answered too many questions. And I'm always just like, I'm just so disappointed because I gave you the option to help you out, and then you made it, so please read the instructions and make sure if I'm doing something to make it easier for you to communicate to me, what you've learned, take advantage of it, please. And we're done. Do you have any more questions about like the exam, or what questions are going to be in the exam? Right, that'd be good to know. But that's that question I can't answer. I was told in advance a date for the exam. It's on the information I have here, but I can't guarantee that that's the exact date. I remember the previous year. So I know that in a previous year, the students, the exam was during like another course. It was really stressful, and they talked to I don't know if it was the coordinator, right? And if Alex, what is okay, let's reschedule the exam. I'm happy if we reschedule. I can choose that date. If there's another date that you guys think would work better, and you can convince the administration, I'm on your side. The date, the date is there. I'm hoping they chose that date, so it's not a problem. But if it is a problem, yeah. So.
Thank you, Professor.
My pleasure. Let's go eat. Yeah.
Yeah, related to the question about ISLN, can I not draw the?
Can you do this without graphics?
Yeah, and just write how
Sure.
it's relevant.
Sure. So you could explain that. It doesn't. Let's see. Does it say? It says using ISLN demonstrate graphically the effect. No, it doesn't say demonstrate graphically. So you're free to choose. And if you can explain. I have this. I write this out, but if you don't have a picture, but you have this, I don't know if we have an increase in the money supply, is going to require a decrease in the opportunity cost of holding money, so that households are willing to hold this increased amount of money with a decrease in the nominal interest rate. It's going to stimulate investment, right? It's going to lower the measuring stick or lower the borrowing costs for firms. So investment, which is a component of demand, is going to increase. As a component of demand, this is going to increase output. That's an ILSM explanation. I didn't use the picture. That's also good.
Professor, we want to take a picture.
Yeah, sure. You want to here, downstairs? It's nice and sunny outside. But when you do it here, if you'd rather. Sure.